Hello, I'm Charlotte. I'm from Ribble Recycled. I'm a crafter from North Yorkshire. I work mainly with natural dyes and botanical prints, but all sorts of stitching and other crafts too. This video today is part of the Stitch Stories Virtual Stitching Festival in May 21 that brings together people from all over the world in a lovely stitching community to share their skills and maybe learn new ones. The festival is running with all free events, but we're hoping that people, if they enjoy the events, will make a donation to our chosen charity, which is the Butterfly Tree. This is a charity that supports orphans and rural communities in the poorest part of Zambia. There's a link on the 52 Stitch Stories Facebook page to the giving site, and it's also on our website www.stitchstories.co.uk. So this workshop's going to be about natural dyeing. Natural dyeing can be seen sometimes as something that's quite complicated, but I'm going to show you two really easy ways to do some natural dyeing today. I'm going to use two dyes that don't require preparation of the fabric beforehand with a mordant. Most dyes, natural dye stuffs, need a mordant to help them fix, but we're going to use onion skin, brown onion skins today, and tea, black tea, to dye with. Both of these dyes are reasonably colour fast, and we're going to modify them afterwards using a solution made from iron, from rusty bits and bobs, to get some more different colours and some variation in the colours. So I'll give you the detail in a bit. Hope you enjoy the video, and please donate if you're able to. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to talk you through the things that we need to do our natural dyeing with. We're going to make two dye baths, one with onions and one with tea, and we're going to use iron to change the colours of the things that we've dyed after we've dyed them. Iron is acting as a modifier in this case. Sometimes it's used as a mordant beforehand, but in this case we're going to use it as a modifier. So the first thing you need to have is some newspaper, or maybe a plastic tablecloth or something like that to cover your work surface, especially if you're working on a wood work surface, because the iron that we're going to use will discolour wood, make it go black. It'll also make your hands go black, so you need some rubber gloves as well for when you're working with the iron. So there are two ways of making the what we call iron water, either iron sulfate or iron acetate. And the homemade way, you're making iron acetate, and for that you need some rusty things. Could be just a few rusty old nails, or anything that you can find on your walks, bits of any old rusty metal. You don't need very much, just a little bit really. And you're going to put those into a container. Let's say those three, you're going to put them into a container with some vinegar that you've diluted with water. So it'll be 50-50 vinegar and water that you're going to use. And you pop them in the container with the vinegar and water, give them a little shake every now and then, and after a few days you will end up with some very rusty looking water. I keep my rusty water going all the time. This has been going for about a year now, and you can see it's really gunky and nasty in there. I keep that outside. So that's one way of making your what we call iron water, and when you're ready to use that, you would dilute it to the colour of I suppose a white wine, maybe a sort of pale urine type colour. It doesn't need to be really rusty. Also, if it's got loads and loads of bits in it, you can filter those out by using any old funnel really, and a bit of old cloth or a coffee filter to strain out the bits, and it's the liquid, the iron water that you would need. Okay, so that's the long way round of making iron water. There's also a quick way, which is using a substance called iron sulfate or ferrous sulfate, and for that you would need, it's a green powder. You can get it in the well, either online or in garden centres. You would need about half a teaspoon. This is really lumpy and it's gone a bit damp, which makes it go a little bit brown. About half a teaspoon in a bucket of water. A bit more than that, half a teaspoon in a bucket of water. So obviously you're going to need a bucket as well. I've got a really old nasty bucket there. You can see it's rusty in the bottom, that I keep specifically for my iron water. So that's something that you're going to need after the dyeing, but I've told you about it now because you need to set it up before you get the dyeing going, in a couple of days before. Then you need some fabrics or yarns that you're going to dye, and they need to be cellulose or protein fibres. So protein fibres would be things like wool. This is some wool torn from an old vintage blanket that was damaged. Silk is another protein fibre, or you can use cellulose fibres such as this cotton here. Linen is another one, bamboo. This is viscose. It's manufactured in a different way, but it is actually a natural fibre. That's a t-shirt that I got second-hand in a charity shop. It's a bit manky, but I thought I would dye it and see how that comes out. Okay, now if you want your dyeing to be super duper even, and you want complete coverage and no blotchiness on your fabrics, you need to really clean those fabrics thoroughly before you use them, to get rid of any detergent that's in them, any fabric conditioner, any grease and other stuff that may have built up over time or been put into the fabric as part of the manufacturing process if you're using new fabric. So there are two ways to do this deep cleaning, which we call scouring. One for protein fabrics and one for cellulose fabrics. So for your protein fabrics, your wool and your silk, they're quite delicate fabrics, so you would need to soak them for a few hours in a pH neutral detergent. I just use baby shampoo, or you can put them through the washing machine on the wool wash with a detergent specifically designed for wool. But don't use any fabric conditioner because it's that kind of stuff that you're trying to strip out. So I do it the easy way. I just bung it in a bucket with a little squeeze of this and leave it to soak for a few hours. For your cellulose fabrics or fibres, you need something a bit stronger to get the gunk out. So one way of doing this is to boil up the fabric for about an hour in a pan of water to which you've added sodium carbonate. Now sodium carbonate you can get online. Some places, some parts of the world call it soda ash, and it's commonly used as a household chemical. In the UK, soda crystals or washing soda will do the job. Not quite so well, but they will do the job. So you put your cellulose fabrics in a pan, and this pan would be a pan that you're not going to use for cooking anymore. You're going to use it for your dyeing processes. You can pick them up really easily at charity shops and in car boot sales. This one was just a couple of pounds. So you put your fibres, fabrics in the pan with about half a tablespoon of your sodium carbonate, soda ash, washing soda, whichever it is. And then you actually simmer it up, boil it up for about an hour, and you will be amazed at the colour that the water goes, the gunk that is coming out. Just amazing. An alternative to that process is for your cellulose fibres, again, to do it in the washing machine. You would have to do it on the very hottest wash, 90 degrees or 100 degrees centigrade, with a little bit of kind of wool type detergent, no fabric softener or anything like that again, but a spoonful, half a tablespoonful of your soda crystals or soda ash, sodium carbonate in the drum of the washing machine with the fabrics. That makes your fabrics really beautifully clean and able to take up the dyes without blotchiness. But you might want blotchiness. So if you want blotchiness, you can actually leave out that scouring stage. That's kind of heresy in the natural dyeing world, but sometimes you do want that blotchy effect. That's fine too. Also, if you're going to tie-dye your fabrics, then you might leave out that scouring stage, because it won't matter if the uptake of dye is not so even. But normally it's a good idea to give those fabrics a really good scouring before you start. Okay, so we're going to make 2 dyes. We're going to make a dye with onion skins, and we're going to make a dye with tea, black tea. There are lots of videos and stuff on the internet at the moment that suggest that you can dye with all sorts of foodstuffs: red cabbage, black beans, blackberries, blueberries, bilberries, currants, whatever. Yes, you can stain with those things. You can't actually dye with them. Those stains are what we call fugitive, and they will fade really quickly to kind of mucky greys. So I would say don't bother using those things for trying to dye with. They might look pretty when you first dye with them, but they will fade really quickly, and better off eating those things really. But 2 foodstuffs that you can dye with that are reasonably colour fast are onion skins, and you can use yellow onion skins, brown onion skins, like these ones here. And it's just the very outer skin of the onion that you use. I keep these. Every time I use an onion, I keep them. That bit I would not use, that yellow bit. So just those brown bits there. And they make a really nice yellow dye that can be modified to green with the iron. And the other thing that we're going to use is tea bags, black tea bags. You can use fresh tea bags if you like, or you can keep your tea bags as you're having a cup of tea. Save them all up until you've got enough to make a dye bath. So for the onion skin dye bath, we would put in the pan, take that fabric out, we put in the pan a good load of onion skins, perhaps a little bit more than that. As I say, I keep them every time I use an onion. And then we'd add some water just to cover those, and then we'd boil them up for about half an hour or so. For the tea bag one, the tea dye, I would use more tea bags than that. That's just a little collection from yesterday and today. I would probably use about 10 to 12 used tea bags, and again you're going to put them into water and boil them up, simmer them up for about half an hour or so. For both of these dyes you can work inside in your kitchen because we're not using anything that you wouldn't use in your kitchen normally. But for other natural dyes that may be smelly or may even be toxic, just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe, I would work outside, and I've got a little 2-ring electric burner that I work on out there. So that's the basic starting point, and in a little minute I'll talk a bit more about making the dye bath and using the dye bath. So this is my little dye kitchen. It's outside, it's in a wood store. It's not glamorous, but it does the trick. I've got a little 2-ring electric hob, my old pans from the charity shops, and all sorts of rubbish underneath that you don't want to see. So we've got 2 dye baths here. We've got the tea dye bath and the onion skin dye bath. They've both been simmering away nicely for about half an hour. So you can see that tea is really black. You can leave the tea bags in if you wish, or you can just fish them out with a slotted spoon. I'm going to fish them out because if you leave them in they sometimes make kind of quite strong marks on the fabric and stuff that you're dyeing, so I just want my dye bath to be empty of its tea bags. So that's that one. You can strain the onion skin dye bath in the same way. I hope you can see that nice colour that's coming in there. Really nice orange colour. Let's see if I can fish some skins out. You see the orange liquid pouring off there. I'm going to leave those onion skins in because I quite like the strength that that gives. Now I've made up some little bundles of cloth ready to dye, and some I'm tie dyeing and some I'm just going to dye as it is. So into the pot of tea, the dye bath of tea, are going a couple of bits of cotton and a piece of that wool blanket. All these I've just soaked in water for about an hour, just so they're nicely what we call wetted out. And then I've tied up a little bundle with some string there to make some lines on, squished one up with some elastic bands, and there's a woolly one that I've also tied up. So there's a bit of tied stuff and a bit of just plain fabric going in that one. I'll pop the lid back on that, turn it up a little bit, and then into the, oh I forgot, I've got some it's cotton yarn that I also want to dye, so I'm going to pop that in and just leave its tail hanging out so it doesn't get mixed up if I stir things later with the other things that are in there. It doesn't get all tied up in knots. So then into the onion skin dye bath, the same again, some wool. Look at that colour already. So there we go, that's going in. Some plain bits of cotton, a scrunched up bit of wool that I've tied up as tightly as I could, some more of those little bits of tied up cotton, give them a bit of a squish down, and then lastly that a pink t-shirt, that viscose t-shirt. We'll see how that comes out, but I've just randomly tied that up with some elastic bands. We'll see how that goes. Mind your fingers. And then another bit of that cotton yarn, and we'll make sure everything is submerged. Your pot needs to be big enough to have your fabrics and stuff moving around relatively freely, and I will give it a stir a couple of times during the process. So I'm going to leave that now to cook about another half hour, possibly a little bit longer. I'll have a look at the fabrics in a bit and see whether I like the colours or not. And then after they've cooked for that time, I'm just going to leave them to cool overnight, and that's so that the fabrics can take up as much dye as possible from the dye bath. Lots of people actually boil up their dye baths again with the fabrics in to get stronger colours, but for the purposes of this we're just going to boil them up for about half an hour, maybe an hour max, and then leave them to cool overnight. And in a little while I'll show you what we get out of the dye bath afterwards. Okay, the fabric's been stewing in the dye baths overnight. Cooked them for just short of an hour, and then I just left them to cool and left them undisturbed overnight. So this one here's the tea. Let's have a look at what we've got. I don't mind getting a bit of tea on my hands, so I'm not wearing gloves at this point. That's the string, nice little beigey colour. Wool always takes the dye up really well. Same with silk, but you can see when I wring it out it's quite a bit paler, but a lovely beigey colour. I'm going to cut that in two because I want to dip half of that in the iron a bit later. These are my kind of tie-dye ones. Let's have a look, see how they've come out. See if I tied the string tight enough. I bet I didn't. Oh yeah, we've got some marks there. And some nice little dyed bits of string that might come in for a project there. That's quite pretty. Might make that into a hot water bottle cover or something. What else have we got in here? Oh yeah, those bits of cotton. And I'm going to dip one of those in iron. So let's keep aside some of the things that I'm going to dip in iron. That was that one. And I'll give that a go. And here's some of the little tie-dye ones. I wanted a mottled effect on this one that I screwed up really tightly with a rubber band. Let's see. Might be able to use that in one of my postcard stitches. Yeah. And then this one has been tied up with string as well. That's not wanting to come off. Again, I tied this one up with a view to using it in a postcard project. That doesn't even want to come up off. I'll try it later. Okay, let's move the tea out of the way. Pop that on the floor. And then let's have a look at the onion. Wow. This is the wool. What a lovely rusty orange colour that's gone. Fab. And again, let's cut that in half to dip in the iron. There's my string. This one's tied up with string too. That's a nice one. Some little bits of cotton. That one can go in the iron. I'll open that one up later. Another little bit of cotton. And that's that t-shirt, it's not everything. You can reuse, oh there's another little tiny bundle there, look. You can reuse the onion skin dye bath. Put another lot of fabric in and it will give you lighter yellows. Remember this t-shirt was originally pink. Oops. I just kind of randomly rolled this up and then put the elastic bands round, so it'd be interesting to see what kind of pattern we get on the shirt. Don't know if you can see that. I'm quite pleased with that. Let's move the onion dye back out of the way so maybe you can see it better. Nice. I'm happy with that. These will all dry lighter. That's a little bit lighter, but the colour's pretty good and light fast. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you about dipping in the iron water. This is, I've filtered my own homemade iron water there, and you can see it's quite a dark colour still. And I'm just going to take a little snippet of the, oh no, that's the onion one, I wanted to do the tea one, the tea dyed fabric, to show you what happens in the concentrated iron water. Now, of course, the tea is full of tannins, so the iron water should react with the tannin and turn it a kind of grey, maybe even purpley colour. That's not coming very fast. I thought that would come faster with that homemade iron water. Maybe that needs replenishing. You can see it's coming a little bit grey there. I'll just leave that hanging on there. And because the iron water is a bit difficult to estimate its concentration when it's homemade. That's why it's sometimes a good idea to use the iron sulfate, because you can measure how much you're using and it's a little bit more controllable. So I've got my bucket there and I've put the plastic down to protect my work surface, and it's really important, as I said before, to do that if you've got a wooden surface that you're working on, because the iron water will stain it black, as it will stain your hands. So that's why I'm wearing my rubber gloves now for this bit of the process. So I mix up that iron water and I'm going to put my samples that I set aside, these are the tea ones, in. Just poke them in, and I'm going to dangle that yarn in so we just get part of it dipped in the iron water, see what we find. And straight away you can see that the colours are changing quite a bit. So if I can pick up the tea one from before, and that's the tea one after, a nice grey, and depending on the tea that you use, sometimes you can even get mauvey colours. And you just leave those samples in until they've reached the shade that you want. They may go a little bit darker if you leave them in for longer. Let's leave that tea one in, the cotton one, a little longer, but a nice grey there. And then let's pop the onion skin ones in and see what happens with them. I'll dangle that in halfway, like the other one. And that lovely woolen one. Now, depending on the strength of the iron and how long you leave it, those colours will sadden quite a bit, and sometimes with the onion skin even turn to a green shade, but I'm not getting any sign of that at the moment. So I think what I'll do is add some more iron. I'll mix that in. You can see the iron water's going quite dark. That's with some of the tannins leaching out of the dyed samples. Okay, that's the onion skin one now. Oh yeah, that's beginning to go quite a different colour from, don't want to touch it with my irony fingers. Let's see if I can do it with the scissors. Quite a different shade from the original one, look. Just with that extra bit of iron. And that's gone lots darker. It may even go a bit green when we leave it to dry. Yeah, that's coming a bit more olive greeny now. Don't know how the colours are showing up on the screen. Okay, so that's it for the natural dyeing video for the Stitch Stories Virtual Stitching Festival. If you've enjoyed what you've seen in the video and you're able to do so, please donate to our chosen charity, which is the Butterfly Tree. You'll find the links on the 52 Stitch Stories Facebook page and also on the website www.stitchstories.co.uk.